This is an increasingly common sight that we see, unfortunately, in large parts of the state of New York. This is a white ash that is dead and has been killed by emerald ash borer. You can see it's definitely ash borer when you look under the bark, and you can see all these feeding galleries. Let's see if we can find an exit hole. That's a perfect one there. They have these holes that are shaped like a D. When they leave after feeding, they leave the cambia layer where they've been feeding, and they don't come out with a perfectly circular hole. So you may see holes like this one in the center of the screen there. That's circular. That's not one of theirs. Maybe from some other insect that's been feeding after they killed it, after the emerald ash borer killed it. But this D-shaped hole pointing upwards, that is conclusive evidence, basically, almost as good as seeing an emerald ash borer. So what I wanted to do here was to introduce the Lingering Ash program. We have been teaming up with the Ecological Research Institute based in New Paltz to do a monitoring of ash. It's called the Lingering Ash Monitoring Program. And the idea is, well, hopefully it's not going to kill all the ash trees. Maybe there will be 1 or maybe a couple percent of trees that have some degree of natural immunity or some kind of natural defense or something that enables them to continue their life cycles with emerald ash borer populations. So there's a grading rubric that we use to go out and evaluate trees. This is an evaluation that we do during the summer, so we can look at the foliage, because obviously this one's dead, there's not going to be any foliage, but many of the ash in this area will have some degree of foliage. They are either dead or they're dying or they're pretty okay. And so there's an index to see how healthy they are. And the idea is to pick some stands of ash where there are some decent healthy trees and monitor them over the coming years and see how they do. The ultimate goal of the project is to find those few trees, or those small percentage of trees, which hopefully there are, and be able to collect seeds from them to then help reforest and preserve the ash. Interesting to note that ash doesn't have a problem regenerating in areas that have heavy emerald ash borer populations. Here you can see some young saplings that are 8 feet tall, and a little bit farther down the way here, these are all being browsed heavily by deer, but the point is they're not really interesting to the emerald ash borer until they get to a certain size. So in an ecological sense, the ash will still be around probably for a while, because it seems that they can get to an age where they reproduce and put some seeds out before being killed. But what it looks like right now is that they will no longer be an overstory primary canopy tree. And this applies to our white ash, green ash, black ash, and pumpkin ash, although I've never actually seen a pumpkin ash knowingly anyway. So areas like this, this is a floodplain, and all the ash in here, essentially 100% of the overstory canopy trees have been killed by emerald ash borer, which has totally changed the succession pattern that we're going to see in this area over the coming years. Whatever white and swamp oaks are in here are going to do well. Red maples, of course, love growing in swamps. And then lots of herbaceous and woody understory that is taking advantage of the increased sunlight. At any rate, major changes in the forest are happening because of this emerald ash borer. And if you'd like to be a part of the Lingering Ash Monitoring Program, please feel free to email me. I'll link my email in the description. And what it entails essentially is marking some trees using an app and monitoring the health of them once, maybe twice in a season. So if you have some ash trees that still look like they're in good health, that have not been treated, and you want to see whether they'd be of value to reforestation efforts or, let's say, preserving the species efforts, please feel free to contact us and get involved in the program. Thank you. Here we can see a pattern of emerald ash borer having killed the main stem of this white ash probably 3 or 4 years ago, and not having actually killed the tree. You can see these sprouts at the side are from the stump, and they're probably 3 years old, and they'll probably grow until they are actually able to produce some seeds, at which time their cambium layer will have thickened up enough that the emerald ash borer will once again be interested in feeding on them. We see this cycle happen in other trees as well. The American chestnut comes to mind, where Cryphonectia parasitica, the blight, will kill the main stem after 7 to 10 years of growth, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. The tree may actually produce some burrs, but then there'll be a reinfection and it'll be killed. So in a sense, this wave of emerald ash borer probably won't make either the American white or green or black ash extinct, although it may make the black ash extinct because it's a much more sparsely distributed species. But it will change its niche in the ecosystem and probably reduce the total amount of food that the ash puts out. The seeds of ash are an incredible source for a wide variety of wildlife. So without that, there will definitely be some changes. But our goal here is to find and preserve genetics that have some natural ability to continue reproducing even with emerald ash borer populations. So we're not really interested in specimens that just are alive because they haven't had exposure to the borer, but ones that have been able to survive an onslaught. And unfortunately, the bad news is that so far, to my knowledge, we haven't found any. But that doesn't mean that they're not out there. And the more help we have in finding them, the greater the chances. Here in the foreground, you can see a whole bunch of young ash saplings and seedlings, some of which have made it past deer browse. They make, let's see, from here all the way to the top there. This all the way up to there. That's one season of growth on this sapling. So once they get above deer browse, they really go crazy. These ones have been kept below deer browse, and they're going to have a hard time. But the point is, we shouldn't lose hope, and we shouldn't necessarily think that all the ash are just going to die, because ecosystems work in really sometimes very hard to predict ways. This wave of emerald ash borer may stick around for a really long time. It may rip through all the ash in the area and then not have a really good alternative host, and may die out, maybe not completely, but maybe largely die out and allow another generation of ash to come up without such intense pressure. We just don't know. So going through, the one thing that we don't want to do is go through and clear ash out that could have a chance, that could have some natural immunity. My recommendation is to wait until they're completely dead if you're going to harvest them for firewood, being of course very careful, knowing that dry ash already are a brittle wood and they have a tendency to barber chair. So if you are doing the felling, to always do very safe felling techniques like plunge cuts and whatever you need to do to make sure that you don't have a barber chair on you. But that being said, letting the ash die in place and dry is also a pretty good technique for drying firewood without using up your space. So I don't think that we should be out there proactively cutting lots of ash. I think that it's best to wait for them to die and then use them appropriately if we're going to use them, or leave them for other wildlife habitat, because of course when this falls, it will provide a whole miniature ecosystem in and of itself, and we don't know exactly what's going to come up in the place of ash. It could be a bunch of species that we're not so excited about, or it could be that we use this as an opportunity to plant in or bring in other species that we want to see in our forests. So it's a very big opportunity, very large disturbance event that we need to use in an intelligent way.